I got arrested by the FBI one time for harboring Dennis Banks. He was on their 10 most wanted list. And one night, somebody came to my house and said, well, I got a phone call, and they asked me if I could expect a visitor, and I said, who is it? And they said, we'll come over and see. About half an hour later, a door knocked on my door, and it was Dennis Banks. He was on the 10 most wanted list, and knocked on my door and came in, and he had been, I said, where have you been? And he said, well, I was in Sacramento. And every night, somebody in a different house, they're all afraid to house him. And he said, I was in 4 different houses in 4 nights. And so he came down and he said, I need help. And I said, sure, come in. So he said, I need a place to stay. And I said, okay. So I turned around and I told him, I said, you can stay here. And he told the 3 guys that were waiting out in the car that they could leave. And they were happier than hell to get out of there because the FBI was hunting him all over the country. Well, anyway, he came in, and my wife said, you're not going to let him stay here, are you? And I said, yeah, why? And she said, well, we're going to go to jail if you do. And I said, yeah, I probably will. And they knew damn well I was. And he stayed with me and my wife and children for about a month. And it was, the FBI was hunting him all over hell. And one morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock on the window in my bedroom. And they were banging on the window. And I said, I'm going to kick somebody's ass banging on my window like that. And I pulled the curtains back and I looked, and there was 4 FBI men. One had a rifle, shotgun, and a pistol all pointing at me. And I said, who in the hell are you? And they said, we're the FBI. And I started to say, yeah, me too, full-blooded Indian, you know. But I didn't think of it with those damn guns pointed at me. And I said, what do you want? And they said, is Dennis Banks here? And I said, he might be. Why? And they said, well, we know he is. And you got about 5 or 10 minutes to come out with your hands up. So my wife is sleeping beside me, and I said, wake up, go tell Dennis they're here. And they're pointing at me, and she's asleep. And she said, what? And I said, tell Dennis they're here. And the phone rang, and she said, here, it's the FBI. And I said, God damn it, they're right there. And she looked and goes, ah, you know. And so she's sitting over there. And so anyway, she woke Dennis up, and he went running down in the hall, and he said, holy hell, they look like blackbirds. They're all around the house. There's 35 FBI men with M16 rifles and shotgun and surrounded the house and arrested the Brightman gang, me, my wife, and 2 kids. And the boys were only about 6 and 7. And they took us down and arrested Banks and I eventually got out. And we started a move to get Banks out. And we eventually managed to get Dennis out. And the interesting thing is that when we went to court and we walked in the courtroom, and there was about 30 people in the audience that started cheering and and clapping. And Banks looked at me and he said, who are they? And I said, hell, I don't know. And he said, so we finally got her over there, and I asked this guy, I said, who is that? And he said, that's Jim Jones and his people. I said, who in the hell is Jim Jones? And that's a guy, you remember, that took all those people down, and they all took poison down in Guyana? And that was Jim Jones. And so anyway, I said, who is this guy, Jim Jones? And so anyway, he put up the money. Well, first he asked, after the talk was over, Banks went back to the bucket, and they let me out. And so Jim Jones, one of his people, asked me, he said, Jim Jones would like to meet you. And I said, okay. And I went over, and he said, we'd like you to give a talk to church. And I said, I'm not religious. I don't believe in anything, nothing. And he said, well, this is a different kind of church. And I said, they're all the same. You know, they collect their goddamn money on Sunday, and they prey on you the rest of the week. And I said, anyway, I said, no, I'm not interested. And he said, this is a different kind of church. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, why don't you come and see? And I said, can I take up a collection? And he said, yeah. And I thought, well, hell, if they got a couple hundred there, maybe I get $100 a piece, $10 a piece, I make a couple $100. So I said, I'll do it. So I came over to give the talk, and there must have been, 1,000 people there. And I said, who is this guy? And that's Jim Jones. And he spoke, and he told them, he said, I want each and every one of you sitting out there to give some money to these two men. He said, among their people, they're heroes. And he said, I want you to donate some money to them. And he said, I don't care whether you give $1, $2, $5, or what. And so they passed a bunch of Colonel Sanders chicken buckets around. And they added it up and collected about $2,000. And I thought, holy hell, I only expected to get maybe, $50 to $100. And he took his ring off and he said, I don't have any money myself, but I'm going to put in my wedding ring. And he put it in the deal. And my wife is sitting, ex-wife, she's got his ring. And a little bit later, we both met Jim and everything. And then he turned around and he said, I want one of you to put up your house so we can get Dennis Banks' wife out of jail. She was in jail. And then one of them put up their house, and it was about $10,000 to get Banks' wife out, Kamook. And we met him, hell of a man. And we spoke at his church one time. He was powerful. Listen to him, I thought, hell, I'm not a Christian. I damn near would join his church, he's so good. And later, he's the one that took all those people down to Guyana, and they all took poison. And about a week before that happened, Banks and I went over to his church to see if we could get some money. And we wanted a couple $100 or something. And so the woman that was in charge said, I'm going to talk to Jim in just a minute. Stick around and we'll talk. So I said, okay. So she talked to him, and he talked to me first. And he said, I have to be very careful because he says, the provocateurs are all around me. You can't trust anybody. Provocateurs, and I know what that means, to provoke trouble, but it's not my vocabulary. And Banks talked to him, and he said, holy hell, he's paranoid as hell, isn't he? And I said, he sure is. And anyway, he told them, give them the money. So they gave us a couple $100. And about 2 weeks later, that's when they all took poison. And, he was, they asked me later, the people, some reporters, what did you feel about him? I said, I liked him. He was a friend of mine. I don't condone what he did, but I liked him. And he was a damn good man in some respects. He invited me to give a talk once up at Ukiah, and I went up there, and those redneck white bastards almost ran me out of town. That Ukiah is not any place for a militant Indian to be by yourself. Those redneck assholes will tar and feather you. AIM, the American Indian Movement, was formed I formed a group called United Native Americans, UNA. We formed about a month before AIM. And AIM and my group were the first two militant national Indian groups in America.